Imagine the woman known for helping the poor, posing for charity photos, is actually the mastermind of a murder ring, killing and burying victims in her own home. A case that shocked Algeria, filled with details stranger than fiction. Bodies in the fridge, murder plots hidden in phone messages, all behind the mask of good deeds. Who is Kheira Ammar, and how did she fool everyone? And what happened to the last merchant who entered her apartment? Don't miss this story. The truth will make you question everything around you. A sudden report reached the authorities, an extremely severe car crash on one of the remote desert roads in Algeria. Initial indications suggested that the driver had likely died on impact, but no one imagined that this would mark the beginning of one of the most complex and mysterious criminal cases in the country. When security forces arrived, they were met with a horrifying scene. The vehicle was completely destroyed, and the man behind the wheel appeared lifeless. Rescue teams struggled to pry the doors open, and once they finally succeeded, they were met with a gruesome sight. The man's face was completely disfigured, shattered glass embedded deep into his skin. Questions began to pour in. Who was this man? He carried no identification, no documents, nothing that revealed his identity. Even his mobile phone was shattered beyond use. The only possible clue, the car's registration number. When they ran it through the records, the first shocking detail emerged. The car was registered to a merchant who had been reported missing 3 weeks earlier. Both he and the vehicle had vanished without a trace. But what made things even more bizarre was this. The physical description of the deceased man didn't match that of the missing merchant. When investigators managed to retrieve the phone number from the destroyed SIM card, they made another shocking discovery. The number belonged to a completely different person, someone who had no known connection to the merchant. At that point, investigators realized they were staring into a multi-layered mystery. They reopened the missing merchant's case and began combing through every piece of testimony. One account stood out. A worker at the merchant's business claimed he last saw him with a young man he didn't recognize. The merchant had left with this man in his car and was never seen again. As the investigation widened, stranger patterns began to emerge. 3 more missing persons reports, one for a livestock trader, one for a contractor, and one for an independent businessman. All had disappeared under eerily similar circumstances and within a narrow time frame. None left a single clue behind. Attention returned to the man who died in the merchant's car. His name was Belkir Taibi, and he was married to a well-known woman in the region of Mascara, Kheira Ammar, a prominent figure involved in charity and social initiatives, and even a former local election candidate. Due to her reputation, authorities initially dismissed any idea that she or her husband could be involved in foul play. But then came an unsettling detail. 3 full days had passed since the accident, and Kheira Ammar had not reported her husband missing. She hadn't visited any hospital or police station to inquire about him, an unusual response, especially for someone of her status, whose presence in public would be immediately noticed. This silence raised red flags. Investigators decided to visit the couple's home. When they arrived, they found the apartment locked and abandoned. Neighbors revealed something strange. Belkir and Kheira had stopped living there regularly. They would only show up occasionally, stay for a very short time, and then vanish again. This had never happened before. They used to live there permanently. Mystery now hung heavily in the air, and the truths that slowly began to surface sent chills down the spines of everyone involved. What really happened? Where is the real merchant? Who was the man that died behind the wheel? And is this the work of a mastermind orchestrating something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined? Neighbors revealed that Kheira and Belkir would appear at their apartment occasionally, staying briefly, often with unfamiliar guests, before vanishing again. Their visits seemed purposeful and fleeting. What raised red flags was Kheira's indifference toward her husband's prolonged absence. She showed no concern, which led authorities to obtain a search warrant, fearing something had also happened to her. Inside the apartment, police were met with horror. A decomposed corpse was found wrapped in blankets, and a second body, dismembered, hidden inside a refrigerator. The place felt more like a slaughterhouse than a home. Murder weapons lay around, and one room was newly furnished, likely prepared to receive victims. Forensic analysis revealed both bodies were male, killed over 2 months earlier, brutally tortured and mutilated. DNA results matched 2 missing persons reports, confirming Kheira and Belkhair's link to the disappearances. Had it not been for the accidental car crash, their crimes might have continued, but Kheira had vanished. Investigators turned to her family. Suspicion quickly fell on her brother Louis, whose behavior was nervous and evasive. His physical description matched the last person seen with one of the missing merchants. When an eyewitness identified him, Louis denied everything, until phone records exposed detailed messages between him and Kheira, outlining victims and plans. The most chilling discovery. Even their mother knew about the crimes but denied involvement. Eventually, Louis confessed. He and Belkhair killed the victims and buried some under their house. Kheira's role was to lure wealthy men under the guise of a secret affair for money. Once inside the apartment, the victims were ambushed, robbed, and murdered. Belkhair would sell the stolen cars, often dismantled or with forged documents. It was a well-planned scheme cloaked in charity. But their last victim changed everything. Louis targeted an elderly, wealthy merchant, tempted him with false promises of a secret brothel. The man took the bait and met his end. When Louis showed the merchant personal photos of his sister Kheira, they were nothing like the public image she was known for. In those pictures, she appeared in a completely different light, seductive, unrecognizable to those who saw her as a charitable figure. The photos alone were enough to lure the merchant into an agreement, blinded by his own desire, unaware of the trap he was walking into. Louis then took him to the house, where a grim fate awaited. As soon as they arrived, the merchant was murdered in cold blood. They took his car, and as usual, Belkhair drove it off to sell. But this time, the plan didn't go as expected. A sudden accident ended Belkhair's life and exposed everything. Every killing they committed was part of a calculated operation, and the profits were always divided equally among the three: Kheira, Belkhair, and Louis, a family-run criminal ring, disguised under a mask of respectability and deceit. Following a meticulous investigation, law enforcement managed to track Kheira Ammar's phone. Once the device was switched on, they pinpointed her location. She was attempting to flee the country through illegal immigration, but they captured her before she could escape Algeria. At the time of her arrest, she was carrying large sums of money in various currencies, along with a significant quantity of gold, enough to finance a new life abroad. Her escape was no impulse. She was fully prepared to vanish and start over, far from the horrors she had left behind. Confronted with overwhelming evidence, Kheira eventually confessed, but she played a clever hand. She claimed to be a victim herself, saying that everything she did was out of fear of her brother and her husband. According to her, they threatened to kill her if she refused to cooperate. She insisted that her role was limited to luring wealthy men to the house, after which she would leave, never participating in the violence that followed. She alleged she only learned about the killings afterward, and that when she saw news of Belkhair's fatal accident on television, she knew the chain of crimes would be uncovered. That's when she decided to run. But no one believed her story. Everything uncovered so far pointed to a far more sinister truth. Kheira was not just bait. She was an active, willing participant in the planning and execution of these crimes. Her charitable reputation had merely been a well-crafted facade to mislead society. She knew how to build a perfect illusion, a virtuous woman, helping the poor, attending charity events, and appearing in social circles. But behind the scenes, she played a far darker role, one that few could have imagined. How many seemingly honorable public figures are nothing more than predators hiding behind polished masks? Today, Kheira Ammar and her brother Louis are behind bars, awaiting trial in a case that has captured national attention. The media now refers to them as the Algerian Raya and Sakina, a nod to the infamous Egyptian sisters who lured and murdered countless women in the early 20th century. And one chilling question remains: how many victims were there, whose bodies were never found, and who would have been next had death itself not claimed one of the killers and torn the mask from their faces?